Hey there, guys, gals, and everything in between. Sorry for the jump scare, but I thought now would be as good a time as any for my face reveal. After all, my nickname is the Wolfman. But electric sheep dreams, you might ask. How can you be both a sheep and a wolf? Well, you know what they say: sheep in the streets, wolf in the. Wolfman is the latest from horror filmmaker Lee Wanell. It follows the story of a family in turmoil as they desperately try to survive the night after their summer vacation is rudely interrupted by a werewolf. As the night continues, the patriarch of the family undergoes his own difficult transformation, possibly becoming an even bigger threat than the monster on the outside of the house. Now, let me get this out of the way right off the bat. If you're coming to this movie looking for a bunch of werewolf action and crazy scares, you're really not going to get it. Instead, this movie is much more of a body horror kind of flick. It's basically broken up into survival action segments in which the family has to confront the werewolf that they're dealing with, what I'll refer to as the titular Wolfman. And then we're also following our protagonist's father character as he goes through a transformation, turning into Wolfman 2.0. The movie opts for a slower pacing when it comes to our primary character's transformation. The slow buildup allows the audiences more opportunities to really connect with Christopher Abbott's performance, who does a really solid job here as a father who just wants to protect his family and can feel his sense of control slipping away. The major subplot of the film is the struggling marriage between him and his wife, played by Julia Garner. From the beginning of the film, you can tell that these two care about each other deep down, even if there's a lot of tension on the surface. Having these two at odds really sets the stage for an interesting dynamic when more of the werewolf stuff comes into play later in the film. Garner's character in particular has become increasingly detached from her family, having chosen to focus on her career in recent years. When her husband gets afflicted with a case of some serious rabies, it's now up to her to switch roles from breadwinner to protector. Having been a fan of Ruth since her Ozark days, I was pretty excited to see her in this film, and I would say that she delivered, even if the script doesn't really do her any favors. She has one pretty standout scene where she gets emotional with her husband, but the actual dialogue in the scene itself is a little cheesy, to be honest. Really, I could say the same for another scene earlier in the movie between Christopher Abbott and the young actress that's playing his daughter. He's essentially giving her this monologue about his duty as a father and how he needs to protect her, and it's just so on the nose. I do think this guy's a good actor. I mean, I've liked him ever since he played Self-Delete Man, but I just can't get behind the writing in some of these scenes. I appreciate the effort to make these characters feel like a real family, and for what it's worth, I think they do come across as characters that have emotional ties to one another, but I just wish they felt a little bit more real as opposed to characters in a melodramatic soap opera. But enough of all that family nonsense. This is the Wolfman, damn it. We came here for werewolves. So how are they? The main Wolfman is pretty lame. He spends most of the night occasionally coming by the house and bashing on some doors, but he never really feels like any significant threat. The movie also takes measures to keep the Wolfman off screen for as long as possible, and by the time they finally reveal the creature design, I think it's apparent why. The werewolves in this movie are somewhere in between the amazing effects work of something like An American Werewolf in London and like CGI garbage like the Twilight Saga. That is to say, while they're not just complete digital abominations, I didn't necessarily think the design was anything to write home about. What's more effective is the actual transformation itself. In several sequences throughout the film, we'll get to switch over to the POV of Wolfman 2.0 and see his literal perspective. It's this trippy, almost dreamlike vision where we get to understand the world through the eyes of a werewolf. It's some of the more effective sequences in the movie, and it really works especially when it switches back and forth between human perspectives and werewolf perspective. There's also some good gross out stuff. One scene in particular really made me feel like eating a rack of ribs. I'm sure you'll know it when it happens. Watching the human body readjust and contort itself into that of a monster is definitely morbidly amusing. The transformation takes place not only across the visual medium, but auditory as well. The film does some interesting stuff with sound design, effectively communicating the horror that is losing your ability to communicate. All of these elements culminate in what is a decently compelling family drama with some werewolf scares for good measure, but none of the suspense is as effective as it should be. If you've seen this filmmaker's previous project, The Invisible Man, you'll know that he's more than capable of setting up shots that are dripping with anxiety. In a film like Wolfman, in which we're not sure if we can trust our protagonist to hold back his animalistic urges, you'd think there'd be a lot more suspense when it comes to the danger he poses. I don't think I was ever really scared of the Wolfman or the Wolfman 2.0 in this movie, but I enjoyed watching his transformation and the struggle that his wife was willing to go to in order to protect their daughter and hopefully save him. Even if the movie is filled with predictable moments, I would say if you've seen a couple movies before, you'll probably know what the very last shot of this one is going to be. It still had a really effective dynamic between the three leads, and I think that the third act's climax did leave me feeling emotional on some level. The whole movie ends up functioning as a metaphor for two people in a relationship that is inevitably coming to an end, and they both don't really want to accept it. It works on that level, but it's far from the most entertaining werewolf picture you'll ever get to see. This one gets a big bad wolf, minus. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you specifically. Thank you.